Everyone dreams of winning millions of dollars with minimal effort. I had an opportunity to do so. Would you turn down such an opportunity? Yeah, I wouldn't either. My name is Mender, and I'm 21 years old. I live with my mother and my little brother. Dad left us 10 years ago. Mom tried to contact him, but failed, so she was forced to raise us alone. She turned down many marriage proposals after that. From an early age, I have dreamed of doing something good to pay Mom back for all of her efforts in raising us, so I decided to use my intellectual talent to do so. You see, I'm highly intelligent. I can memorize a vast amount of information. I always earned excellent grades in school. The only problem was that I knew I could never work hard to get rich in my own country because it was so poor. The only chance I had to get rich was to have a fantastic stroke of luck, like finding a gold mine or a magical money tree. My chance came along one day when a game show called Who Will Win Millions offered millions of dollars to the winner. In this show, you have to answer a series of questions ranging from easy to hard. The catch was that the last question was always extremely difficult to answer. The show announced that the next winner would win $3 million. That kind of jackpot was exactly what I needed to achieve my dream of helping Mom, so I decided to apply to get on the show. They called me 2 days later to tell me that I had been selected to be one of the show's contestants. When I arrived at the show's studio, the staff greeted me and got me ready. A coin toss decided who would go first. I got lucky again and won the toss. As expected, the questions started out easy and gradually became increasingly difficult. I was able to answer the next to last question. So far, so good. The show was live, and I was confident that my family was watching me, praying that I would win. The final question was next. Suddenly, the game show host called for a commercial break because the show's director wanted to talk to me. The director offered me $50,000 to be sure to answer the last question wrong. I was shocked. They cheated and played stupid games with people's dreams. I refused to play their game of skullduggery. The show resumed, and I was lucky and was able to answer the last question correctly. It was an esoteric knowledge question, but I had read about it before, so I got lucky again. The host was visibly upset. Nevertheless, he asked if I wanted to say anything to the audience. I said I did, and then I proceeded to tell the audience that, on the last break, the show's director bribed me to miss the last question on purpose. At that point, the show's producer cut the live feed, and the director had security guards escort me off the studio stage into the back room where, well, I can't remember what happened there. Waking up later in a hospital bed, I spent weeks recovering from mysterious bruises all over my body. I received a small reward from the authorities for exposing a scam. It wasn't $3 million, but I was satisfied anyway. The show was canceled, and the staff were arrested and served some prison time. I gave my reward to Mom. What luck. My name is Jerry. I am the village dreamer who touched the poor suffering in pain. In my country, illness is a monster that eats its victim's soul without mercy. I decided to be the soul saver, or the savior of souls. Heroes in my country don't wear superhero costumes. Rather, they wear white lab coats with stethoscopes hanging around their necks. I knew how difficult it was to become a doctor, but I was up for the challenge, so I enrolled in a medical college. The studies were challenging, but my creed in life is this: an opportunity may only come around once. You must take it or leave it. After graduation, I was hired to work in a government hospital in my village. Unfortunately, I discovered early on that my knowledge level wasn't broad enough, so I traveled to England to expand my knowledge base. I wanted to take advantage of the experience of the professional doctors there, so I attended difficult surgeries and observed and studied them intently. My mind was like a sponge, absorbing vast amounts of empirical data. Even so, I still wasn't satisfied with my knowledge level, so I traveled to the USA. When I arrived in Chicago, I felt like a thirsty man who had an oasis in the desert. I encountered advanced technologies, modern, new medical equipment, leading-edge ways of treating heart disease, serious heart disease cases, and fantastic anecdotal stories from famous doctors about their most unusual cases. I dreamed of being a great doctor like them, and my opportunity came when a baby girl was diagnosed with a serious heart illness. She was not expected to live long, so I volunteered to perform some risky surgery on her. All the doctors around me thought I was crazy, but I knew that I could do it. After 5 hours of arduous concentration, focus, stress, and sweating under the operating room lamps, the surgery concluded successfully. I had proven myself to be a great doctor after all. Afterwards and subsequent surgeries, I became known as the guardian angel who saved souls. I gathered a huge following due to my successes. I was surprised when my surgery techniques later became required studies in my country. I became a role model for many aspiring medical students. I returned home to thank my country by building a heart hospital that treated people for free. Many people donated to my cause. My hospital saved many souls, but this is a never-ending mission. My country bestowed upon me the honorable title of the Prince of Hearts. Will you donate to my cause? Hi there. I'm Andrew and I'm 23 years old. I'm a student in a medical college. I'm studying to become a doctor because it's my lifelong dream to find a cure for cancer. I want to save people's lives from the scourge of this disease. This war became personal for me when my mom fell victim to it. Mom fainted one day and we took her to a doctor who took some x-rays and diagnosed that she had lung cancer. Eventually, she succumbed to it and passed away. After that, I swore that I would find a cure for this hateful, evil curse on mankind. I began researching every book I could find on the subject, including old medical texts and foreign research papers and journals. One ancient tomb I perused mentioned a little-known, rare herb that grows high in the Himalayan mountains in China that was said to be able to reverse the effects of cancer damage. Heartened by this discovery, I set up a small expedition to go find said herb no matter the effort and no matter the cost. I completed my preparations and enlisted the help of one of my colleagues. The journey to the base of the mountains was tiring and difficult, and the trek up the mountainside was long and arduous. Once we reached the Tibetan plateau, we began searching for this rare, wondrous herb. We queried the members of a local nomadic tribe living there for clues. Luckily, their old shaman was familiar with the herb and told us where to look. Following his directions, we found it at long last. But finding it was only part of the battle. We returned home to my lab. I then had to see if I could extract a cure from it. The research and testing would take time, money, and effort. After months and months of experimentation and trials, suffering failure after failure, I ultimately achieved success by sheer persistence and luck. I formulated a cure for cancer in my lab. What a momentous day for humanity this was. I couldn't wait to publicize my findings in the medical journals and tell the world that cancer had finally been conquered. Then just 2 days later, I received a mysterious phone call from an unknown person with a gravelly voice who threatened me with death if I were to publicize my findings. I was shocked that someone would want to block a cure for cancer at the expense of millions of cancer deaths in the years to come. And so, here I stand in my lab, unafraid and unswayed. I will publish my findings, and I will let the world know about this miracle cure. If my life should prove to be the cost of saving posterity from the continuing ravages of cancer, then so be it. I will gladly pay that cost. Hi there. I'm Marco and I'm 21 years old. I was born and raised in one of the poorest neighborhoods in my city. I tried to find a decent hobby at a young age that might lead me into earning a living. I found my passion when I began working in the computer field. I fell in love with technology. Because of my intelligence, I became famous in a short span of time. I could identify computer problems and resolve them immediately. I became wealthy, but my greed couldn't be satisfied. I want to get richer quicker, so I became a hacker. I experimented and played around trying to crack various low-level security systems. Then one day, I decided it was my time to up my game by trying to hack into banks and websites. My first challenge in my new career was to hack into my local bank. Banks have strong computer security systems, but I was able to breach their security protocols and breach their security defenses. I honed my skills and developed a hacking program that could hack any website without leaving a trace of evidence. I hacked into the bank's funds and transferred a huge amount of money to my account. In the morning, the news announced that the bank had been hacked by an unknown person. There were no leads in this case. I wanted to boast to people that I was the hacker who had cracked that bank, but I was too smart to do that. My next challenge was to hack into my country's national banking system, a higher-level security system. It took me a couple of attempts, but I succeeded in the end by transferring a hefty sum of money into my account. The whole city was abuzz talking about the phantom hacker who was stealing money from banks with impunity and without leaving a clue. My third challenge was the Ministry of Finance. I tried to breach their website a few times, but I failed each time. After some investigation, I learned that they had a Russian security expert in charge of their security, and he was very good indeed. As a matter of pride, I took it upon myself to make beating him my personal goal in life, like an equal opponent in chess. We began playing our game. I would try to hack in, and he would block me. This back and forth game continued for a little while, until one day he sent me a message. "Got you." Suddenly, my computer shut down. Soon afterwards, the police showed up at my door and arrested me. So here I sit in prison. But the chess game between myself and my Russian adversary is not over yet. I will finish my prison term and come back for a rematch someday. It's a matter of personal pride now. Hi there, I'm Carl and I'm 19 years old. I live with my grandpa on his farm on the outskirts of the city. Grandpa is fond of nature and quietude, as these calm his soul and spirit. He loves cultivating flowers and is very skilled in this field. He reads numerous books on unusual species of flowers, including their planting and growing requirements. He can also extract perfume fragrances from flowers. At first, I didn't care about this hobby of his and viewed it as a waste of time. However, after talking with him many times at length and listening to his myriad descriptions of the beauty of nature and flowers, I became hooked on them myself. Now I am as passionate as he is about them, and I love to study and learn about exotic and rare flowers. One of Grandpa's friends happened to be a botanist. He could talk for hours about rare flowers, even imaginary ones depicted in science fiction movies. One evening after he had visited our home and left, we went into the kitchen to prepare dinner, when suddenly there came a knock at our front door. I answered the door, but no one was there. Nothing save a small box with a card, which I dutifully carried to Grandpa. The card said simply, "A gift from a dear friend." So we opened the box to find some strange seeds that were unlike any that Grandpa had ever seen before. He read another part of the note. "This is a Yasni flower from the future. Get ready for a fantastical, unforgettable trip." We didn't really believe this silly message, but we decided, what the heck, let's plant them and see what happens. In just 3 days, the seeds had produced exotic-looking purple flowers. Grandpa plucked one to extract some perfume from it. It had a wonderfully fragrant smell. Suddenly, I felt enervated and listless. My vision blurred, I couldn't breathe, and I became dizzy and passed out. When I opened my eyes, I was in the middle of some unknown desert. There were unfamiliar-looking parked cars with people in unfamiliar-looking clothes. One of the strangers pointed at me in alarm and shouted, "Catch him!" I ran, but they surrounded me and caught me. They bound my hands and hung me from a horizontal tent frame. I heard a groan and looked to my left to see Grandpa, similarly bound and hanging from another tent frame. The strangers were speaking in a language I had never heard before. Their apparent leader came over to us and said, "See this desert? The entire world is like this. Because of you. You destroyed our world. Our future is dark and bleak now. Those Yasni flowers you planted ended up breeding out of control and destroyed the world. You need to pay for your foul deeds." Suddenly, I heard a gunshot. Someone had shot Grandpa in the chest. He was bleeding profusely and appeared to be unconscious or dead. I couldn't tell which. I screamed, and then the shooter came towards me with hatred blazing in his eyes. He stopped and placed his gun barrel to my forehead. I screamed, "No!" and closed my eyes tightly. After a pause and hearing no shot, I opened my eyes to find myself lying on the floor beside Grandpa, the plucked flower lying between us. I woke him up and told him about my dream and found that he had had the exact same dream. He called his botanist friend and described the seeds, the flower, and its fragrance to him. The botanist said the unknown flower sounded similar to one that grew high in the Swiss Alps. It was illegal to import because it was known to induce hallucinations and cause other unpredictable reactions in people. To this day, we have no idea who the dear friend was that sent us these unusual, hallucinogenic flowers. We figure it must have been someone's idea of a practical joke. Or were these Yasni flowers indeed sent to us from the future?
End-of-the-world scenarios are presented in a lot of Hollywood movies. Zombie apocalypses, alien invasions, meteor collisions, monstrous solar flares, premature ice ages, and worldwide deadly virus outbreaks. The last one is the one I used to imagine, a deadly viral outbreak that spread all over the world and wiped out humankind. My name is Rita, and I'm 21 years old. And as you can see from my introductory paragraph, I have an active imagination. I'm in my senior year at med school, on my way to becoming a doctor. My parents died in a car accident, which left me responsible for raising my younger brother. Our aunts and uncles lived in another city, so they couldn't really help us much. It was up to me to nurture good habits in him regarding food, health, and education. I had to find work after my parents died, so I got a job at the hospital, where all the doctors predicted that I would have a bright future ahead of me. One day, the hospital director called me into his office and told me that I had won a scholarship to study and work in China. I was so happy. I'll get to work and study abroad in a foreign culture, but that meant that my brother would have to come along. So, we went to China, and we got an apartment near the hospital I was supposed to work. China was a beautiful country. All the people worked diligently. The area I was in was exceptionally clean, and all our neighbors were very kind. China was one of the most powerful industrial countries in the world. The only obstacle I faced there was finding suitable food to eat. The Chinese people ate practically anything that moved. Dogs, cats, snakes, scorpions, ugh, disgusting. But when I heard that they ate bats, I threw up all night. During my studies, I knew that China had a lot of rare illnesses, but I never imagined that I would encounter any while I was there. One day, our hospital received a case with strange symptoms. After many diagnostic tests, we still couldn't figure out what the affliction was. The patient had a fever and a very bad cough. His respiratory system was in severe distress, so we put him in the intensive care. Shortly after, we began receiving an influx of patients with the same symptoms, a red flag that an epidemic was probably already on the way, and my brother and I were right in the middle of it. What a nightmare! Soon afterwards, my brother fell ill. That's where I drew the line. If an apocalypse was coming, I wasn't quite ready for it yet, so we left China and returned home. Thousands of people died in China due to that rare disease, but thankfully, my brother recovered fully and is now okay. As for me, I shifted my studies to seeking out a cure for this new coronavirus that broke out in China. Hi, my name is Laura. I'm 23 years old, and I teach art. I recently got married to the love of my life, Norman. I considered him my friend, my brother, my son, and my husband. We loved to prank each other, even after we got married. For instance, one time I turned off all the lights in the apartment, dressed up as a monster, and scared the living daylights out of him when he came back from the store. Another time, he damaged my car. I put mayonnaise on his toast. I did worry sometimes that our jokes might go too far. I mean, he did get really mad at me once. He stopped talking to me for 2 days, even though I apologized profusely many times. After that, our pranks sort of stopped. I figured our pranking days were over. About a month later, I returned home to find a letter on the floor. I opened it and read it. If you don't pay us 100,000 by Friday, we will kill Norman. I smiled. Norman was pranking me again. When he returned home, I hugged him and showed him his prank letter. He read it carefully, and his brow furrowed. He appeared seriously frightened and swore that this was not part of any prank. He told me that we needed to leave town as soon as possible. I asked him why, and he told me that before he married me, he had stolen a gold statue from a motorcycle gang. I asked him why he couldn't just return it with an apology, and he told me that the statue was worth a lot of money and could make us really wealthy. That night, an armed masked burglar broke into our apartment and confronted us with a gun. He said to Norman, "Hello, Norman, long time no see. You need to choose between the statue or your wife. Choose now." Norman was hesitant. Then he steadfastly said, "I can't give up the statue. Take my wife." The masked man turned towards me. He pointed the gun at me in a threatening manner. I was frantic. I was staring at Norman in shock. Suddenly, the masked man ripped off his mask. It was Keanu, Norman's brother. Norman sat down, laughing so hard he could hardly stop to breathe. Between laughs, he said, "This is payback for the last prank of yours. I was so mad at him that day, but it's all right. He doesn't know what I have planned for him."